You asked first whether, because I write fiction, and to what extent was this very daunting? It was daunting. It was very. I went into it with a lot of trepidation. But what was instructive for me was the fact that I'm dealing with possibly the world's best human being. And for me, that was an impetus. That was a motivation enough to say, let me try and become the best I can. As Silo was saying earlier, Madiba tapped into the nation's unconscious and it tapped into my own unconscious and made me want to become a better writer. And I think this is how this came up to be. But to answer your question regarding what it is that I might have found out which surprised me, I think Madiba's life was one endless surprise. For instance, we were surprised. I was surprised because I was still here in London, working for the ANC in 1990 when he was released, and we had all expected him to come out looking like the pictures we had seen, and he had inspired a lot of artists to draw likenesses of him. And when he came out, he was very different from all that. He was leaner. He looked almost like someone from the Far East. His eyes were smaller and he was paler. And he looked like someone who had been, but incredibly healthy. And he just looked like someone who had been ready to come out and, to use a very inelegant phrase, kick some butt. And so when that surprised me, but much more, I knew that he was a forceful, forthright, determined, very disciplined human being. When I read through his own writings, and when I also read about how he was like a dog with a bone when it came to an issue which he wanted to be resolved, such as when he put all his effort into the resolution of the problems that were ongoing in the Congo, in the DRC. The amount of energy he expanded on that, for me, that was a real surprise because he was no longer a spring chicken, he was no longer a young person, young man. And then when he broke, because the UN or the Americans had instituted an embargo, a no-fly zone over Libya, over Tripoli, he traveled from Tunis on the road across the desert to go and meet with Gaddafi to make sure that he convinced Gaddafi to accept the UN crafted roadmap towards the resolution of that Lockerbie crisis, the bombing that had put Gaddafi on in the spotlight. Because Madiba's whole orientation was to make sure that an African leader must not be humiliated, and he wanted to avert that and deprive the Americans from the possibility of putting up a show trial. So that energy for me was surprising, and of course some of the other tidbits I got from Madame Grasa Machel, such as his insistence on doing things for himself in the house, including there's a picture in the book of him polishing his own shoes on the plane. So it was like that, a very basic human being who could be with the highest of the potentates and kings and princes, and what also as comfortable with the men and women on the street and the child.